So Apple have just had their WWDC 2023 event, and we have new Macs, new operating systems, and a whole new product category for Apple with their new VisionPro augmented reality headset. Now, we don't normally cover Apple events on this channel, but there is quite a lot here that could have quite a big impact on the business of professional video content. So I thought a quick run through of this event that is focused on video professionals specifically could be quite useful for us to make. The big news is, of course, the VisionPro headset, and I have plenty to say on that in a minute, but let's start by going through the other things in order. There's now a 15-inch MacBook Air, which if you want a Mac to edit on but you're on a budget and can't afford the MacBook Pro models, could well be worth it. The M2 chip is plenty fast enough for most video editing projects, and the larger 15-inch screen will be much better to use in video editing software than the 13-inch version. If you have the money to step up to the MacBook Pros though, I still would recommend it for the M2 Pro and M2 Max chips and the extra ports like the HDMI, SD card reader and extra USB-C. Then there's the new M2 Ultra chip, which is probably the biggest news here for video creators right now. This is just like they did with the M1 Ultra. It's two M2 Max chips stitched together, and it's going to be pretty ridiculous, to be honest. It's a 24-core CPU, up to 76-core GPU with 8,000 gigabits a second memory bandwidth. The numbers are pretty insane. Compared to the already pretty insane M1 Ultra chip, they say it has 20% faster CPU performance, 30% faster GPU, and its neural engine is 40% faster. The neural engine is the part of the chip that specifically handles AI and machine learning. So for tools like Photoshop's new generative AI and the video editing AI tools that we're starting to see come out, that 40% increase could be really noticeable. This new M2 Ultra will be in two new Macs, the new Mac Studio and the new Mac Pro. Between the two, most people would probably be better suited with the Mac Studio. The advantages of the Mac Pro is an upgradable SSD and PCIe expansion slots. For most professionals, I think the decision will come down to, can they get away with using the Mac Studio, or will they be forced into having the Mac Pro because of a specific workflow requirement? But it is good to have an option. With the Mac Studio specifically, Apple has said it's up to 50 times faster video processing than the M1 Ultra Mac Studio. It can handle up to 22 streams of 8K ProRes video playback, which is crazy. So the Mac Studio and the M2 Ultra chip is a really big deal for video creators. Then they refreshed each operating system: iOS, iPadOS and macOS. Lots of fantastic bits that I'm very excited for in regular day-to-day life, but nothing that really stood out for video professional work. But then they got to the one more thing moment and announced the Vision Pro, an AR headset, which is certainly a talking point. They've done some really clever things here. But let's be honest, at launch this is going to be a gimmick curiosity that some people might spend a bit of disposable income on because they're into tech. It's not going to be a working tool for most people. It's going to be about $2.5 to $3 grand to buy for a start. But what this might just be is a glimpse into the future for the industry. When they announced the iPhone, we all thought that was a ridiculously expensive and we were just fine without it. It was a fancy gimmick for tech heads, but now look at us. We all have one in our pocket, or if we don't, it's an Android phone that looks a lot like an iPhone. Fast forward 10 to 15 years, is this what computing is just going to look like for people? If the tech gets cheaper, becomes less intrusive to wear with a whole ecosystem of apps around it, it might well be. So let's explore that concept for professional video editors specifically. First of all, the price for this one right now, £2,000 or £3,000 is actually not that expensive in Apple Store perspective. Their Pro Display XDR, for example, is $4.5 grand. And this is something that we just haven't seen before. The trick where you can look down at your MacBook and then have the headset show you the display is probably the most interesting bit for me. It's a big floating screen with full Mac OS on it. So you don't need to wait for Resolve or Premiere to be supported in Vision OS, for example. You have this big floating screen for your Mac in front of you, and you can resize it and have other apps floating around it. An editor, for example, could have a Mac Studio, one of the new M2 Ultra really powerful ones, which is connected to all their media hard drives and a keyboard and mouse, of course, as no one is going to be editing video by flicking things around and tapping their fingers together. And then one of these headsets. It would be incredibly immersive. The timeline could be as big as you need it to be, and you pair it with a MacBook Pro, you can take that same experience anywhere you go, in the office, at home, on a plane, a hotel room. You know, that has real tangible benefit for us. I think for video creators, it would have to be paired with a Mac though. Even though this thing has an M2 chip inside, without a Mac, what does file management look like? You can't plug a card reader in or an external hard drive. Does it even have storage on the device itself, or is it all done through cloud syncing? I imagine it would be. I reckon professionals would be using this as a display for a Mac for the most part. But I would love to see what editing software would look like when redesigned for Vision OS though. A big, long, floating timeline that hovers in front of a full-screen display viewer that can be whatever size you need it to be, and a media bin just over to one side to grab things from and drag them down. I can see the appeal. It could work really well. And if all of this takes off, what is that going to do to the way that the average person consumes content? The demos that Disney showed off were fascinating. A Star Wars themed environment to watch The Mandalorian in, multiple camera angles and scores and stats for people. All of this is content that people need to make, of course. It's more jobs for people. And even just normal VR content, the demand for that is about to go through the roof. Or just for traditional films. Having one or two of these in the house certainly costs a lot less than having a full-blown home cinema room with a big projector screen in your house. And it's arguably more immersive. You know, people have been wondering for years what a TV from Apple could look like. Perhaps this is actually it. And we're all going to be sitting down at home watching TV through these headsets in a few years' time. Who knows? For now though, this first generation product does look like it has some definite drawbacks. Apparently it is quite heavy when you're wearing it. The battery will only last for 2 hours, so most work is going to need to have it plugged in to mains. And of course support for apps is going to take time to mature. We have to be realistic and manage expectations with this thing. But like I said at the start, at launch, this will pretty much be an impressive tech gimmick for early adopters to have fun with. But I do think this has some real potential as a concept in the world of professional video work. But what do you think? Let me know down in the comment section. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.